We have a quorum and it is time for the meeting. Can we now invite the administration to come in? Welcome. Welcome to the meeting of the Public Works Subcommittee meeting. Item 1 on the agenda. I should say this first. Until the last meeting, we have already approved 10 items, totaling $22.2984 billion. There are 6 papers on the agenda today. The first 4 were submitted at the last meeting, but we have not started scrutinizing those. The 5th and the 6th are new papers submitted by the administration. These 6 items would involve a total funding amount of $6.5724 billion. If all the applications are approved, there will be altogether 16 items that would have been approved, totaling $28.878 billion. Discounting the block grants for land resumption and computerization, which totals $2.674 billion, there will be a total of $26.1968 billion approved for projects. I will remind members here that if you have direct or indirect pecuniary interest related to the items under discussion today, please act according to ROP 83A and disclose the nature of such interest before you speak. Also, please pay attention to ROP 84 with regard to voting where there is direct pecuniary interest involved. Item 1. Head 707, 754 CL Infrastructure Works for West Kowloon Cultural District, Phase 1. May I refer you to paper 27. Members are invited to upgrade part of 754 CL entitled Infrastructure Works for West Kowloon Cultural District Phase 1 at Category A at an estimated cost of $192 million in money of the day prices. The administration consulted the Subcommittee on West Kowloon Cultural District Development under the Development Panel and the HA Panel on the 21st of November 2017. The subcommittee did not object to submitting the item to PWSC for approval, and the gist of the discussion at that subcommittee has been tabled. Attending for this item, we have Mrs. Betty Fong, Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs, Mrs. Sorayas Lee Kwan Siu Kun, Project Manager, HAB, Ms. Alice Pang, Project Manager South from CEDD, Mr. Ringo Mok, Deputy Project Manager, CEDD, and also Mr. Ng Ying Chun, Head of Technical Services, West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. Mr. Ray Chen will ask the first question. 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like the administration to clarify one major principle to the public. We are here to look at this pedestrian linkage system, linking WKCD with MTR stations. What is the principle? In what circumstance will WKCD, the administration, or MTR pay for such links? Can you please explain that to the public? And in para 13, it is said that the government will bear the capital cost. But since there is a high degree of integration with the CG Center and the MTR Austin Station, therefore, the WKCDA and MTRCL have agreed to share the responsibility and the associated costs in respect of the management, operation, and maintenance, or MOM, of the proposed pedestrian link. How is that apportioned? The government will bear the entire capital cost, but management, operation, and maintenance will be shared out. What is the principle? And how is the apportionment going to be done? And in para 19, financial implications. In-house management costs payable to WKCDA for the proposed and trusted works in relation to the proposed pedestrian link. There is this footnote 6, and I'd like you to explain it. This is a project entrusted by the government to the WKCD. Why did you not entrust it to the MTRCL? Mrs. Betty Cheng, thank you for the question. Back in 2008, when we applied for $21.6 billion for WKCD, we already said very clearly that the administration will provide so-called common and government facilities. Common facilities would include bridges, tunnels and roads. As long as they are to be used by the public or other departments, those will be the responsibility of the government, and we will apply for separate funding for these. This is the principle set down in 2008. This time around, we are applying for an underpass linking up MTR station and CG Center, and also we are going to landscape the existing underpasses, and these are infrastructural or common facilities. That is why the government will fork out the building cost. As for operation, usually, if they are common or government facilities, usually the government will also be responsible for management, operation and maintenance. But since this new pedestrian link mainly links up WKCD and MTR, we have got the agreement of these two bodies for them to share out the MOM cost. This is a special arrangement, and they are willing. They will discuss among themselves, but every year that will cost about $1.5 million. This is the recurrent cost. How is the apportionment done? Government, MTRCL, and WKCD. The apportionment is like this. We will be responsible for the pedestrian link after it is landscaped between Canton Road and the CG Center. It will cost about $300,000. And then, as I said, $1.5 million will be for the new pedestrian link that will be shared between MTRCL and the WKCD. They are still talking about how they are going to share it out, but they will be responsible for the recurrent expenditure. What about footnote 6 under I in para 19? In-house management cost. Please explain. Time is up, but I will answer that question afterwards. All right. Next, before I allow another member to ask questions, I have to declare that I am a member of the WKCDA, but that is voluntary work and there is no pecuniary interest involved. Ms. Tanya Chan, first time, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chan. P.S. If you remember, last time when we discussed this at the subcommittee, there was another footbridge that costs exorbitant prices. I'd like to know when it will come back. And then at the end of the year, CG Center will be commissioned. And as we have seen in the papers today, we know that the commissioning artwork would be done by the Chinese Artists Association. Well, of course, they raised objection to the artistic director who was to be appointed earlier on. I'd like to ask whether the link will be completed according to schedule. Please let us know the progress. P.S. First, let us not call it a footbridge with exorbitant prices. We are going back to adjust the design. We hope that in April, when we have the joint subcommittee meeting on monitoring WKCD, we can come back to report to members the latest progress. We believe there will be a new design for your reference. As to when it can come back to the PWSC and FC, we'll see how we work on the budget and when we can have the detailed design. But anyway, we'll come back in April. As for the new underpass, we believe it will be completed in 2020. But the CG Center will be commissioned at the end of the year or early next year. Right now, it links up with Canton Road, and we are going to make use of the existing underpass for pedestrians. Of course, people can also walk at grade. If PWSC supports this paper, we'll go to FC as soon as possible so we can get the funding so people can walk from Austin Station directly to CG Center. That is the most direct way, and you'll be shaded from the elements. Ms. Tanya Chan, thank you. In April, you'll come back to the joint subcommittee. Will there be just one design or two for us to choose? And also, Will it happen that before the underground connection is commissioned, you will put up better signage at grade? Of course, we hope people will frequent the CG Center. I'm not only talking about elderly people. Can you provide signage along the entire pedestrian link in order to assist the people, especially the elderly? Can we defer to the WKCD? Mr. Ng. Ms. Chen asked about the Artist Square Bridge that will take back in April. Well, we will let members see the revised design. And then this link at Austin Station. Before we can connect it with the CG Center, there is another pedestrian tunnel that people are already using day in, day out. And it is, oh, I know, the one where the ex-policeman Choi Po Ko killed somebody. And that is very much frequented every day, and we'll ask the Highways Department to provide more signage. But in fact, many people are already using that tunnel every day.
Well, perhaps at that time, since it's newly commissioned, and there may be first-time visitors to WKCD, if you have signage pointing to CG Center, it will help elderly visitors. Your comments are noted. Mr. Yu Si-wing, 4 minutes. I think it's necessary to build this subway because we have Austin Row MTR station. Is it the only link to the WKCD? I mean the existing subway together with this one? And without these two subways, does it mean that there will be a disconnect? Yes. Is the member suggesting that this is the only one? Because from the plan, I see that from Austin Station to CG Center, there'll be a connection, and then further on, there'll be a connection to the WKCD as a whole. So we have the existing pedestrian subway and this one. Does it mean that this will be the future connection to the MTR station? Thank you, Mr. Yu. In the long run, on the east side of the WKCD, there will be other forms of linkage, such as a footbridge leading to Kowloon Park and the other areas. This will be constructed later. At the moment, we have these two connections. But of course, along the waterfront promenade, you can go along Canton Road to the WKCD. But from Canton Road, we do encourage the use of subway. So I hope it can be constructed as soon as possible. Back to my question on costs, paragraph 19E, regarding the fees for consultants. Well, your paper mentioned consultants engaged by the CDD and the WKCDA, and then the MOD price is 3.8 million. And then paragraph 17, you also mentioned that the in-house management costs will be kept at about $3 million for the WKCDA. I want to know whether this actually belongs to the cost under the same head. But there are two parts to the cost. I can defer to my colleague later. And for 19E, that's the consultants engaged by the CDD and WKCDA. And the consultants help the department and the authority. For 19I, that's the in-house management cost payable to WKCDA. That was the question asked by Mr. Ray Chan, because the works are to be carried out by the WKCDA, and the government has commissioned the authority to undertake the PIW public infrastructure works to the WKCDA. We need, therefore, the engagement of professionals, say quantity surveyor, QS, and also internal accounting staff to be deployed. So the $3 million, basically the management costs as set out. So it will be kept at $3 million. Does it mean that it will be calculated afresh, or Is it just a figure and you're waiting the WKCDA to submit the report? It's done on a reimbursement basis, but it will be capped at $3 million. But in Annex 3 of the paper, it is set, or enclosure 3 to the paper, in fact, for the in-house staff resources estimated, say for project manager 0.5, quantity surveyor 0.2, not very significant numbers. How are the estimates prepared? Perhaps I can defer to Ms. Pang to take your question. Thank you for your question. As PS explained very clearly, the in-house management costs will be paid on a reimbursement basis based on the need of the project and the manpower needed. Basically, we need project managers, staff to monitor or supervise the works. But why is it that the number of staff estimated is so small and then the cost entailed is so great? Why is there such a big difference? Ms. Alice Pang. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Yu. At different phases of the construction, there might be different level of manpower needed. But on the whole, we need the estimated post for the works, and the staff and the time spent on the project are basically the cost that we prepare, cost estimate that we prepare. Mr. Ma Fung Kwok, I need to declare first of all that I'm a director of the WKCDA. Regarding the pedestrian linkage system, very soon, Siju Center will be commissioned, and this pedestrian linkage system provides essential support traffic-wise and safety-wise for pedestrians. I support it from the perspective of a director of the WKCDA as well as a member of the public. At the same time, because the government is bearing the costs of the works and the WKCDA will oversee the works, I have this question. Well, from the WKCD's point of view, the administrative staff would, of course, like to achieve perfection. But at the same time, I'm concerned about the rational and optimal use of public money. So my question for the government is that when the government entrusts the management of the project to the WKCDA management, in terms of cost control, progress, quality assurance, how does the government make sure that they will meet the government's expectations? Because in reality, because the bill is not footed by the WKCDA, they may not be as sensitive in terms of the cost of the project. Well, of course, it's not for me to say here what how the authority discusses the matter of cost, but how do you make sure that the progress of the project and the cost would be put under control? This is in fact a CEDD project. The CDD has entrusted the WKCDA to supervise or to undertake the project, but in fact the CDD continues to be the supervisor of the project. I can defer to Ms. Alice Pang to explain more about the cost. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for the question. Regarding the entrustment, we have an entrustment agreement in which we stipulate that the WKCDA will be required to submit regular reports. And I myself also regularly have meetings with WKCDA to monitor the progress of works, and my colleagues and myself would attend various meetings to check the progress. If necessary, we'll also require WKCDA to give us explanations, for example, on matters that require follow-up action. On cost management, should there be substantial changes, our consent will have to be sought. These provisions are set out in the entrustment agreement, which sets out our responsibilities. I'd like to follow up on this because Well, I need to keep what is said behind the boardroom confidential. But at first, the design was so good, and then according to the management, with different designs, the cost would still be suppressed. But then subsequently, the authority was concerned about the escalating costs, and then costs were suppressed. Well, had the authority or the board not discovered the escalating costs, it would have been exorbitant. So my point is, how do you make sure that the funds be used in an optimal manner? Well, we're not talking about the footbridge today. We're talking about the subway, and the board has all along agreed with the design, and it has been the fruit of discussion between the CDD as well as the WKCDA. The footbridge will have a nice design. It will more or less be similar to one of the MTR footbridges. And let me reassure Mr. Ma that we'll come back to the joint subcommittee in due course to report to members. We'll make sure that the design of the new footbridge will be the same as other footbridges. We would opt for no-frill design either as well. Well, the same principle applies. I just want to express my concern on costs. Of course, the principle is, of course, to suppress the cost as much as possible. Mr. Wafan, the DAB supports this project. We hope that the project can be implemented as soon as possible. Because for Sishu Center of the WKCD, it will be commissioned this year. We need to provide proper links because they will be conducive to the operation of the WKCD as well as Sishu Center. It will also benefit the visitors. So I support this project. I think it should be implemented as soon as possible. The PS just now mentioned that in April they will come back with the footbridge proposal. And I'm glad to hear that the government has heeded our views and gone back to redesign the footbridge. But whether this is actually done depends on what we see in April. Anyway, I hope it can be done. I have a question. Just now, other members already asked a question, and this is also a question from the public. Is it that the government is undertaking this project itself, or is it entrusting this project with the WKCDA? Why doesn't the government do this project itself? Because it is not very complex, the government has experience. Why is it now in the hands of the WKCDA? I mean, in principle, we support that, but I think you should give a clearer account. P.S. Well, perhaps you should give another account. Perhaps some members are still not quite understand the issue. There is a misunderstanding here. There are two parts to the funding application. One is to be undertaken by the government, that is beautification works with the existing pedestrian subway with Austin Road West and Canton Road. For the other part is linkage between Austin MTR station and the underground of Sishu Center. Because both ends involved the MTRCL and WKCDA, we find it very confusing if a third party, being a contractor, is also involved. Since the Sishu Center's construction is in progress, it's better to let the WKCD undertake this project as well. For Austin Road MTR station, however, we have signaling system and fire service installation, etc., belonging to the MTRCL. We therefore need to enlist the help of the MTRCL. That is why the new pedestrian linkage system should best be built jointly by the WKCD as well as the MTRCL. The government should not be the third party for the sake of avoiding confusion. Basically, the DAB supports it. Mr. Holden Chow, first round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Of course, another pedestrian subway to connect City Center with Austin Road is good. It will help disperse the crowd. So I support the construction of the subway. But I do have another question. According to the paper, the existing pedestrian subway at Austin Road will also be beautified. I do not have information at hand, but for the existing pedestrian subway, would the government check this? Is it the case that barrier-free facilities like lifts and escalators are already provided at every exit of the subway? Because I wonder if you've considered, regarding the existing pedestrian subway, for exits that are not equipped with barrier-free facilities like escalators and lifts, you should also provide them along with your beautification works. I hope the government can provide such information for our benefit. Another question.
About this new subway, according to what the administration said, it would ask the WKCDA to do it because the CG Center is built by them, and this is a linking up with the CG Center, and they don't want to call a third-party contractor to the site to avoid confusion. We understand that in theory, but my concern is, I hope you're doing this not just to avoid confusion and therefore you don't allow yourself choices. People may know that you are bound to engage that contractor because you want to avoid confusion, then people would know that you are in a very poor bargaining position. Can I please listen to some explanation? The Bureau. First, the existing subway. In fact, it has a certain gradient. Wheelchair-bound people can make use of the ramp, and the ramp will be preserved. But you understand, the pavement on Canton Road is quite narrow. It's not possible for us to install a lift. At Austin Station, there are lifts and also escalators, and it will help people who need BFA. The ramp at the existing subway can still be used by wheelchair-bound people. Second part, how can we control the contract price for the new pedestrian link? Can I ask Ms. Tam to answer the question? Director. Ms. Alice Pang. We will go through a tendering process, and we'll act according to that process together with the WKCDA. As for landscaping, that will be the work of the ASD. It will use its in-house resources to do supervision. They will be engaging a quantity surveyor who is a consultant, but the rest of the work will be done in-house. Thank you. Any follow-up? Just one simple point. About this new pedestrian link, it is entrusted to the WKCDA. Of course, you are going to monitor it, but you may not engage the same contractor. You'll just go through a normal tendering procedure. Is that right? There may be a few contractors who can submit bids. Can we defer to the WKCDA, Mr. Ng? Yes, we are going to go through a tendering process. Yes, tenders will be called. All right. Next, Mr. Ray Chan, second round, 3 minutes. I'd still like to clarify who should be responsible for the project and whether that is the best way forward. The PS said if it is directly taken up by the administration, there will be another contractor and another unit. But frankly speaking, the existing contractor, of course, enjoys an advantage. But I'd like to ask you, is it that this is not very feasible realistically? Supposing you call this an independent government project and you call tenders, Do you have to pay MTRCL? That's the first question. And if I look at the cost, you are paying the MTRCL more than the WKCD. Have you thought about paying the MTRCL and allow it to build it? Is it that the WKCDA can just engage the contractor it is using because the price is right and they don't have to get new bids? PS? Chairman, actually, WKCDA would like to have a link to the MTRCL, so the MTRCL will not be interested in helping us build it. There is a very low possibility about that. But the WKCDA needs this pedestrian link, so it's very much willing to help us build it. But if the government goes through a tendering process to engage a contractor to do it, we believe the price would definitely be higher than what we are doing now, no matter whether the WKCD will entrust it to the same contractor building the CG Center, because our contractor will have to understand the site from start, and it will have to get all the building plans of the CG Center because it goes into the underground level of the CG Center. Therefore, the advanced works will require much more time than if we entrust it to WKCDA, and also it will be more expensive. I'm sure about that. As to why we are paying $400,000 more to MTRCL, we have looked at what will be included in the sum. You will understand that within an MTR station, now you want to open up, you have to make an opening and then link it to with other things. Well, you are going into their systems, the fire service system, the signage system, the disaster warning system, and also signaling system. The MTRCL will have to reconfigure all that for that link. Therefore, we will have to pay it. Also, they have to engage an AP to certify that the project is up to their standards. So the sum mainly covers these two parts. Ms. Tanya Chen, 3 minutes, second round. Thank you, Chairman. We said just now that the CG Center and other facilities will be coming on stream, and you are going to link up with the Austin Station underground. However, they are not going to be commissioned at the same time. I'm worried about the crowds. Once it is commissioned, you want to popularize it. You want to draw the crowds. And I would expect a lot of people going there, and you have to do crowd control, especially you have to provide enough signage for traffic diversion. I hope the WKCDA will do this. Of course, we want to popularize CG as well. We hope young people will go there. But you will have to think about also many elderly people going there, and you must take good care of them and provide very detailed signage. Next, I'd like to ask you whether you have got preparation for this. At Austin Station, before there is the subway, again, I would ask you for good signage. And also, I will have to register the stance of the Civic Party. I must apologize that I have many views, and I'm also monitoring the project. But the Civic Party has never supported the original provision of $21.6 billion, and we are telling you to improve community facilities. So we are not going to support the project, but we'll continue to monitor it. Thank you, Chairman. P.S. In para 10 of the paper, without a new link, the subway can hold out for some time. There will be 2,600 pedestrians per hour, but if you look at the two-way flow, it would be 5,200. And with the new one, we can cope with another 4,300 two-way trips. So the highest per hour peak that we can take care of is 6,900 trips two-way. and it can cope until 2031. And by 2019, we'll still have to rely on the old one. Maybe we can still cope, but of course, if indeed there will be so many people going to CG Center, we will have to put up signage to divert the crowds. But the peak, of course, will be in the evening because there will be major shows. And we expect fewer people to use the subway during the day. We'll be monitoring the situation to help dispersal of crowds after the show is up. And also, on rainy days, you have to make it safe for the elderly. I'd like to ask the PS. The landscaping work for the existing subway. I'd like to know whether the progress can tie in with the commissioning of the CG Center. Thank you, Chair. We have a paper submitted to the Joint Subcommittee. We expect the CG Center to have a soft opening in December this year. And then in January, February next year, there will be the commissioning shows. And then in March, April, the CG Center venues can be rented out to theater groups. Therefore, if we can complete the landscaping of the existing subway by the first quarter of 2019, in theory, we'll be able to tie in with the opening dates. That is why we need the money for ASD. Mr. Eddie Chu, first round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to ask about the $30 million for landscaping. Can we have a breakdown? Don't know whether you have it at hand. Can we be told more, please? Can I defer to Ms. Alice Pang? Thank you for the question. I don't have the breakdown at hand, but I can supplement it. In the main, we are using porcelain claddings, and also there will be thematic installations. We'll be removing a certain part of the subway also. I can give you the breakdown after the meeting. Well, but I'm not a member of the subcommittee. Why is it that you are going to remove a certain cover? Thank you. In enclosure 2, page 5, you will see from the plan that since the cover is already also covered by another one above it, so we don't need the existing cover of this subway because it blocks the sight line. We will remove it so that people can look through to the other side from the CG Center. I understand. Next, I'd like to ask about what the PS mentioned, and that is there are other links that have to be built. I'd like to ask about the retention of the remainder of 754CL in Cat B. Are you talking about the links to WKCD and that you will not add more to it? PS. Within 754CL, we will have to come back to LegCo to cover other projects. If we have those as well, then to the east and west of WKCD, we'll be able to link up the two. On the western side now, on the side of Elements, we don't have a footbridge linking up with WKCD. We'll come back to get funding. And then to the west, we also need some direct connection to the Palace Museum, the Arts Park, and also the exhibition venues. We don't have a pedestrian system on that side. When we come back, we will be working on these, and also to the east, we want to link up with Kowloon Park. We'll have to come back to seek funding for these. And also we want to build a pier on the waterfront of WKCD. So there could be transport by sea. What about 5C? 5C is the pier, is that right? You talk about berthing of vessels. Yes, that's correct. But Ms. Tanya Chan mentioned the Artist Square Bridge, which is so expensive. Now you are not including it in Cat B, and we can't see it in Cat A. So in what status is it now? PS. Well, actually, it is under 5B. It is one of the pedestrian linking up with the Kowloon station of MTR. Lastly, I don't understand why the MTRCL is not interested, and it seems we are trying to talk it into it. Because actually, in the peak hour, there will be more people, a few thousand of them, brought into MTR. Earlier on, we were talking about Wong Chuk Hang MTR station, and we also mentioned about linkages. We are going to send passengers to MTRCL. It is going to have business to the tune of millions of dollars. There will be even more at Wong Chuk Hang. So we don't understand why MTR seems to be having the upper hand when the administration talks to it.
A brief response from the PS, perhaps? As I said at the outset, this is a public infrastructure works, PIW. In 2008, we already suggested that the government will foot the bill. But on this occasion, in terms of recurrent expenditure, including recurrent maintenance, lighting, cleaning, and it will be apportioned with the WKCDA. So that's exactly the point. Well, in future, the MTRCL will have management of the place, and it also owns the place, so to speak. We're talking about recurrent expenditure. My point is, why shouldn't it bear the capital costs as well? I think the PS already answered your question. Mr. Ray Chen, third round, 2 minutes. Chairman, first of all, I'd like to ask for papers. Well, at the Joint Subcommittee, regarding WKCD, I see that we have a paper on Sishu Center. What about the latest financial arrangement? I need the paper as well. I need time to read it. And I'm concerned about noise of the project. In fact, in paragraph 14, you made a point. There is going to be a show at the end of this year. Will your construction progress be able to catch up? Because it's expected for completion in 2020. So before the show is up, you want to complete all the works involving noise and vibration nuisances. Well, of course, usually the Cantonese opera show will take place in the evening, but there could be rehearsals during the day. P.S. Thank you, Mr. Chan, for the question. We're also concerned. We'd like works to commence as soon as possible, because if works cannot commence in March this year, so that we kickstart the construction with the potential noise and vibration works first, could be an impact. That's why we're striving for funding approval from the FC by the end of March. But we also have a final result. The WKCDA will be footing the bill first. But it comes with a condition that we'll need to pay up if we cannot get the funding approval in time. In fact, we had the same experience before, because we do not want to affect the operation of Sishu Center. If the pedestrian linkage system is not put in place in time, then I think we're all concerned that there could be a connection issue. That is, if we could only rely on the existing pedestrian subway. Well, don't worry, as long as the WKCDA trusts the government, just spend the money first, you'll be reimbursed later. But I want to know more about noise and vibration mitigation measures. For the WKCD and the Sishu Center, our estimate is that we'll get a permit in March, and yet there could be activities that involve much noise and civil engineering works they are expected to be completed in May or June this year. That is why we want to strive for funding approval as soon as possible, so that by third quarter or the beginning of next year we can complete all the activities with more noise. Whereas for the internal or the interior decoration, the construction will involve much less noise. Mr. Eddie Ju. The MTRCL is taking advantage already, and the WKCDA and the MTRCL, to my understanding, will join hands in managing the subway. Now, I'd like to go back to the key deliberations of the Joint Subcommittee to monitor the WKCD. Regarding point D, some members suggested that the administration should take a flexible approach in dealing with street performances inside the pedestrian subway. Now, I'd like to know whether there is any progress in relation to this member's suggestion, be it beautifying the subway or building the connection. In the future, will you be flexible in, say, allowing performances in the subways? Will there be, say, a special zone for such performances? Thank you, Mr. Chu, for the comment. Let me clarify, first of all, regarding Austin MTR station. Well, the MTRCL doesn't really own the exit or the linkage. Rather, it's the KCRC. Well, because the KCRC, or rather West Rail, entrusted the MTRCL in providing that facility, so it's actually the government's asset. Whereas for street performance, as we said at the Joint Subcommittee, the existing subway is rather narrow. And if we allow street artists to give performances there, it may cause obstruction. On the whole, the WKCD takes a rather relaxed approach in allowing street performances. It has a licensing system. If you want to give street performances in a WKCD, you can apply for a performance license or permit so that you can give a performance there. As for whether street performance will be allowed inside the subway in the future, I think we understand that in terms of management by either the government or WKCDA in the future, we do allow street performances there as long as no obstruction is caused to the use of facility or to public access. But if there are too many in number, we may need to use a permit or license system. Another question, sorry, Chairman. Beautification works. After the existing subway has been beautified, who is to manage it? Our department. So when we discuss whether we can flexibly allow street performances in the subway, does it mean that it's confined to the connection to the MTRCL, right? Because for the existing one, we need to abide by the existing laws. We do not have any existing provisions on that. No, the summary offences ordinance. Well, we just follow the usual standards not to cause obstruction, etc., not to cause nuisance. It's a right of a citizen to give a street performance on the condition that he doesn't obstruct the public or access. Dr. Fernando Zhang, first round, 4 minutes. My question is this. For this part of the project, I can see from the pictures towards the last pages of the paper, the condition of exits and subways, openings, and then we also have another drawing showing the what happens after beautification works. I can see that we have a similar situation here. Of course, after beautification works, the whole subway will be upgraded. This is good. But for WKCD, do we need a higher grade facility for WKCD? Well, if you were also a member at the last term of the Joint Subcommittee, you would understand that it's actually the request of members. We originally did not plan to upgrade the subway. But on members' request, we went back and discussed with the department about beautification of the subway. So beautification is actually possible on merely a member's request. I think it's a good thing that the government actively responds to members' requests. That's really good. Thank you. So we need to be more proactive so that, right, you can say that you've successfully asked the government to do it. I think beautification is good. There are other subways, footbridges that deserves this improvement if they become dilapidated. Dr. Zhang. Well, I understand that, say, for the CGO here, for the landscaping and vegetation, flowers, etc., they are of a higher grade than elsewhere. Anyway, back to my point. On Sishu Center, I can't help but think about street sleepers at the same time, because in Yau Ma Tei, the street sleepers have been driven away, whereas we have such a nice structure here. The street sleepers, of course, won't be allowed to use the subway because it's an esteemed place with a good atmosphere. And in fact, back then, street sleepers were driven away because they were, so to speak, incompatible with the atmosphere there. Now, my question is this, about the estimated construction costs. You covered the contract and fees, etc. And I think what's unique in your estimate is that you have provided some itemized expenses, in-house management costs, monitoring, etc. I want to know why these are separate items. Why is it so unique? Well, I think that that has been answered many times. P.S. I'll defer to Ms. Alice Pang to give you more details. Thank you for the question. We'd like to make the paper more comprehensible to members regarding our itemized cost estimate because it involves a number of departments. For beautification works, the ASD is also involved. So having discussed with the relevant bureaus and departments, we have itemized the estimates for your for your understanding. So you deliberately provide a breakdown of the estimates for our benefit. I see that you are quite serious about the beautification works. If there are no other questions, I'll put it to a vote. Will those members who support please raise your hands? Payment division, all right. The bell will be rung for 5 minutes.
Members, now we are voting on item 1, 754 CL infrastructure works for West Kowloon Cultural District Phase 1, paper PWSC, bracket 2017 to 1827. Will members please proceed to vote? Will members please check their votes? Voting shall now stop and the result will be displayed. 19 present, 13 in favor, 4 against, 1 abstention. The project or paper is supported. Next, item 2. Item 2 on the agenda, 202 SC Community Hall cum Social Welfare Facilities at Queen's Hill, Fanling. Please refer to paper 28. Can we now invite the administration to come in? Just now, we passed one item. Would any members like to propose singling it out for voting at the FC? Yes, Dr. Fernando Zhang does so. Attending for this item, to answer members' questions, we have the following public officers. Mr. Kenneth Leung Tat Yen, Chief Civil Engineer from TH Bureau. Mr. Edward Che Chang Wo, Project Director from ASD. Ms. Eugenia Chu Ah Chi, Assistant Director of Home Affairs. Mr. Chong Wing Woon, District Officer North. Ms. Pan Kit Ling, Assistant Director of Social Welfare, and Mr. Chiu Pat Kay, Chief Architect of Housing Department. Members. Dr. Fernando Zhang, first round, 4 minutes. Chairman. In terms of building design and management, does this project belong to HAB or SWD? Mr. Leung, thank you for the question. This complex includes a few service facilities, including a community hall and related social welfare facilities. So the complex will be co-managed and co-maintained by the HAB and SWD. Dr. Zhang, what about the area that will be taken care of by either department? Mr. Leung. Thank you, Chair. There will be about altogether 10,000 square meters of space. The community hall occupies the ground floor, and then the 2nd to 6th floors are for social welfare facilities. Okay, I understand. I'd like to ask about the residential care home for the elderly. I understand that at the WSP this has been discussed, and we said that the self-sufficient and subsidized places ratio should be such that there should be more subsidized places. Now you have come up with this figure of 150. How many of them are self-sufficient and how many are subsidized? Is it for Ms. Pan Kit Ling to answer? AD? Thank you, Chair. We are using a ratio of 60 to 40 for providing subsidized and non-subsidized places. Later on, we will take a look at the demand for subsidized and non-subsidized places in the district. And then we'll make a final decision. Any follow-up? Well, then I don't understand. Members were saying we should landscape subways. But at the WSP, we have said time and again that since you build these RCHEs with public money and people can't get a place in a subsidized home before they leave this world, I am asking you to provide subsidized places in this building built by government. The reason is very simple. Because if it is a self-sufficient place, it will cost easily $10,000, and those who can afford it do not have to stand in the queue. Those who can't afford it will have to wait, and it will always be too late when they get a place. And we are talking about facilities built with public money. I believe for the neighborhood elderly center and childcare center, there will not be any 60-40 ratio. I don't think at the NEC there will be 40 people who are not subsidized and 60% of the people who are subsidized. Therefore, we think the RCHE should provide 100% subsidized places. This is built by public money. Why do you want to put part of it in the market? We have said this many times. Why do you still insist on the 6-to-4 ratio? Ms. Pang. Thank you, Chair. It is only a starting point. In other projects, we have reacted to the demand and actual circumstances in the districts. And sometimes there are more than 60% of places which are subsidized. We will look at the situation in the district again. So you think Fanling is a district with many rich people. So 40% of the elderly there should pay for their own place in an RCHE. Do you mean that, Ms. Pang? Any response? This is our planning parameter. We use 6-to-4 as a starting ratio. But we'll look at the situation in the district. She's not answering me. I am saying that 6-to-4 itself is wrong. You are just repeating, yes, we are wrong, and so you continue to be wrong. Dr. Zhang, I think Ms. Pang has responded to your question. I would propose that you follow this up at other venues. I have heard Ms. Pang say that this is not set in concrete and that it can be adjusted according to the situation on the ground. I want them to let us know the basis for considering a 6-to-4 ratio for the Queen's Hill RCHE. I will remind members that actually, with regard to this item costing $536.1 million, the housing panel has been consulted on the 5th of June 2017. Members supported the referral of this proposal to the WSC by the administration. That is why we are considering it today, and the gist of the discussion at the housing panel has been tabled for your reference. Next, Mr. Gary Chen. Chairman, I won't object to this Queen's Hill project, but I'm aware that there will be 12,000 units housing 35,000 people in Queen's Hill. You are providing 150 places at the RCHE. There will be a 100-place childcare center, and then there will be an integrated children and youth service center, plus one neighborhood elderly center. You are providing these to 35,000 people. Don't you think it's too small a proportion? Also, in the North District now, there are comparatively more new arrivals and ethnic minorities. I believe there will be a good proportion of such people later on at Queen's Hill. Can you provide other facilities for young ethnic minority people? Thank you. Mr. Lau? Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that question. Within the Queen's Hill development, the SWD has always been concerned about the demand for social welfare facilities. They have taken a review of the existing facilities, and this is what they are proposing after reviewing the situation in the district. Within the Queen's Hill Development Project, there are other social welfare facilities that will be provided, but not within this complex. They will be subsumed under Housing Department. Can I ask Ms. Pang to give you more information? Yes, please. Ms. Pang Kitling, AD. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. In the entire Queen's Hill public housing development, we have put aside places to set up a daycare center for elderly. When we set up facilities in a new area, we will consider the demographic characteristics and their needs, and also the situation of people waiting for certain services. There are other service facilities that will be included in the entire public housing development project. There will also an integrated family support center. Just now, it was mentioned that there will be ethnic minority young people. When we set up the Integrated Children and Youth Service Center, we'll remind the NGOs operating the facilities that when they design services, when they submit service plans, they have to make sure that they take care of the needs of different people in the district. A follow-up. Chairman, I thank the department for the supplementary information. I'd like them to particularly note the geographical situation of Queen's Hill. It's rather on its own, and when people need social welfare facilities, it may not be easy for them to go to other districts to get the service. Therefore, when you consider the provision of social welfare facilities, you have to make sure you can meet the needs of the district so people don't have to go to another district for services. Right. Your view is clear. Mr. Yu Si-wing, first round 4 minutes. Thank you. First question. According to your planning, what is the population threshold for the provision of a community hall, or do you look at the actual need of the district? Mr. Gary Chan says that Queen's Hill is very much on its own, and therefore we need the community hall. But can you add more facilities, like a multi-purpose hall, and also indoor games halls? So we have more different uses, and maybe you can consider providing a library, since there will be tens of thousands of people in Queen's Hill. Who will take the question?
Mr. Leung, thank you, Chairman. Regarding the standards for the community hall, maybe I'll defer to Ms. Zhong from the Home Affairs Department. Yes, Assistant Director Ms. Eugenia Zhong. According to the Hong Kong Planning Standards and Guidelines, we plan for the provision of community hall based on a number of factors. Population size is one factor, and features of the community aspirations, the location, and whether there are similar facilities or another community hall nearby, the accessibility, the utilization rate of the hall nearby, and whether there are other similar community halls in the vicinity for use by organizations. Whether we can provide a library or other facilities inside the community hall. Perhaps Ms. Pang can take this question, or rather Mr. Leung. Regarding Mr. Yu's comments on whether we can have an indoor games hall or a study room here, regarding the Queen's Hill development, the combined plot ratio has been fully utilized. We need to strike a balance between housing needs and relevant supporting facilities. We have therefore used up the plot ratio. and come up with this package of community hall plus other facilities. Regarding other facilities, in fact, in the public housing development project, there are other recreational facilities to be provided. Apart from the community hall and other social welfare facilities, there will be other facilities under the public housing development in Queen's Hill. But will there be a paper to set out your response? Because a number of members have expressed concern. Yes. If residents at Queen's Hill would like to, say, play sports in a sports center, or if they want to use a swimming pool or go to the library, where will the closest ones be? Who will take the question? Thank you, Chairman. Let me invite Mr. Zhang, the District Officer of the North District, HAD, to respond to that. Regarding the library, the closest one is in Luen Wo Hui, about 20-minute walk from Queen's Hill. For indoor games hall, again in Luen Wo Hui, we have one. We have another in Shangshui and Fanling. For the swimming pool, there is one in Shangshui, another one in Fanling. In terms of the Hong Kong PSG, these facilities are sufficient. Swimming pool, we have one in Shangshui, another in Fanling. Next, Mr. Holden Chow, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Well, of course, in the face of the future public housing development in Queen's Hill, Fanling, we need to have facilities for the population, including the community hall, and we support it. But I have some questions. In the paper, it is said that this community hall comprises a multi-purpose hall and also a 150-place RCHE Neighborhood Elderly Center, NEC, 100-place Childcare Center, CCC, etc. Well, these 4 premises, according to the paper, comes with a footnote that the construction costs will be sought from the lotteries fund. Now, the project cost is estimated to be $536.1 million. Does it mean that the community hall will be covered, but not these 4 bare shell premises like the RCC, etc., and that these 4 shell premises would be funded by the lotteries fund? And can you provide a response in writing later? This question, because for the community hall and other social welfare facilities, RCHs, NEC, CCC, etc., these will be provided. But in fact, in experience, this happened in Tai Po. At the PWSC, the project comprises a lot of facilities, but in fact, for some facilities are funded by the lotteries fund in terms of their construction. So, apart from what's set out in the paper, are there any other facility that may be funded by the lotteries fund? Can you give us a written response later? Because I'd like to know whether there are other facilities, the construction of which will be funded by the lotteries fund, that falls outside the scope of this project. And just now the DO mentioned other community facilities such as a library, etc., which are already available in the district. But my comment is this. I see there is a multi-purpose hall in the community hall. It's multi-purpose, but I don't know what purposes it can serve. Can it become an indoor sports hall or games hall? With adjustments to the interior design, I hope the administration will explore it as well. Mr. Leung. Please switch on Mr. Leung's mic. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for your question regarding the construction costs. The whole project entails a cost of some $500 million. and that includes a community hall and the relevant social welfare facilities. In fact, paragraph 11 of the paper sets out our arrangement. Of the $500 million, the social welfare facilities account for some $300 million, which will be funded by the Lotteries Fund. The remaining will be for the community hall. That's about the apportionment of cost. Mr. Holden Chow asked for supplementary information regarding the costs of other facilities. We're going to provide 4 kinds of social welfare facilities under this project to be reimbursed from the Lotteries Fund. There are also other facilities which will be provided in the complex of the Housing Department, and again, these facilities will be funded by the Lottery Fund under another head. I will provide supplementary information. Yes, please do provide a written supplementary paper after the meeting. Mr. Leung Chi-Chang, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the site design, my concern is that next to the community hall, there is a public transport, public transport terminus. Is that right? If my understanding is correct, that means the terminus will serve the public estate there, and then there will be a primary school. I wonder if the arrangement is appropriate. That's not the focus of our discussion today, but still, for this community hall come social welfare facilities, you have facilities for elderly, young children, youths, all of scale. And then traffic will go via the main entrance exit. And if my understanding of the plan is correct, buses will also ply along that road. I wonder this will be quite dangerous for those using the social welfare facilities. That's my first question. My second question is this. For the Queens Hill Public Housing Development, there will be 7 blocks housing 30,000 population. It's really dense. I don't know whether the density ratio is close to 8. Because in Tin Shui Wai, I think the assistant director would know, they have 30,000 population living in 10 odd blocks. But here you only have 7 blocks, so it's really dense. With such high density, there will be a very keen demand for services. And if you only have 100 places for the child care center, meaning toddlers age 2 or so studying, say, nursery classes, I don't know, there may be a long queue. That's what's happening in Tin Yu Estate. The queue is so long. There is such a keen demand. For CCC, it should come under the purview of the Social Welfare Department. So why is it that you're only providing so few places? And my question is whether you can increase the number of places. Mr. Leung. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Leung, for your comments. Regarding the design of the site, I think the department has given it a thought. Perhaps I can invite Mr. Chiu from the Housing Department to give you an account. Now, about the site design, it is going to house a large population. It is a large site. We would like to include a lot of public facilities in the center of the area, including the public transport terminus and the community hall, so that it can be accessed by the population as a whole. And it's next to the terminus, so that one can have direct access from the public transport terminus to the community hall. We make it convenient for the people. Thank you. What about social welfare facilities? Ms. Pang, Assistant Director. Thank you, Chairman. In deciding the number of places for the childcare center and other service centers, we consider not only the supply in the district, but also facilities in the vicinity, including kindergartens. Kindergarten operators can also provide childcare service for children aged above 2. We therefore need to comprehensively gauge the demand in the district. Mr. Lau Kwok-fan, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. For social welfare facilities at Queen's Hill, the District Council discussed it already. We give our support. Now, for the public housing development at Queen's Hill, it's supposed to house a 30,000 population. But as we know, in the future, there will be phase 2, phase 3 developments. There will be private developments as well. Along Shuttlecock Road, among the villages, the population is also rising. So we ask questions. Of course, we welcome this proposed community hall and the facilities, but we ask whether space will be reserved by the government for expansion in the future when demand increases in the future. Just like Fanning North, the Woking Community Hall, it is a one-story building. We think that is a waste, because if we have 2 or 3 stories, we can house the library as well. Land resources are limited. So I wonder whether, in terms of the government complexes or community facilities, whether you can increase the plot ratio or reserve space for expansion of the facilities to provide more services. Otherwise, if we limit the number of stories of a building, in future, it will be difficult to find another site along Shuttlecock Road. Mr. Leung. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for the questions. Regarding the relevant social or community facilities, at the planning stage of Queen's Hill development, we consider the traffic network's capacity and also the capacity of the sewage treatment works. With this consideration in mind, we set the plot ratio at 6, and we have used up the plot ratio. We have struck a balance between the number of housing units to be provided and the facilities to be provided. And as such, we do not have much room to provide additional community facilities. That is basically because of the constraints in terms of the traffic network and the infrastructure capacity. In future, if another study is conducted, and if we upgrade the traffic network along with other facilities, we can then make arrangements. But there isn't much room nearby to allow you an upgrade. There isn't a similar site.
Your plot ratio is set at 6. But you adjusted the plot ratio for another project, so it can be adjusted. It can be changed. We also saw the government taking the initiative to adjust the plot ratio. When you go to the FC, please consider adding 1 or 2 stories to this complex so you can be prepared for future expansion. Mr. Kenneth Leung may not be able to answer your question. He told you that he had already exhausted the plot ratio for this site? Well, as to whether the plot ratio itself can be increased is a planning issue. Thank you, Chairman. Well, that's right. Chairman, your understanding is correct. If we want to increase the plot ratio, the departments have to go through the process under the town planning ordinance, and it will cause a delay to the project. Mr. Michael Luke, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. As members mentioned, there will be 30,000 to 40,000 people in the entire Queen's Hill Public Housing Project, and you are providing one complex to provide all these services, but I'm afraid it will not be enough. History tells us that in any new community, there will be a lot of service demand for nursing care and elderly care. My question is, very often, on the ground floor of residential buildings, there can be provision of social welfare facilities. Are you going to do this time around? Will you provide a home for the elderly or a kindergarten or a nursery on the ground floor of these buildings? Secondly, to take it from where Mr. Edward Lau left it, the plot ratio, you say, has been exhausted, and you may need a lot of time to apply to change it. But it's a fact that you can do it. So design-wise, can you allow for future expansion of this complex? Say, for example, on the story with badminton courts, there is still a lot of space above it. Later on, if you can apply for relaxing the plot ratio and if the need is established, can you provide certain space structurally and design-wise? And I'm not an expert here, but perhaps you can provide enough loading so in the future 1 or 2 stories can be added. And I have seen that happen with schools. And also, there are 3 badminton courts which are outdoor. And I'd just like to say that there is space for a 3-a-side basketball court. In fact, you can also draw the lines and erect the basketball rack for young people to play and hold activities there. At the housing department, housing panel discussion, well, as you can see from the report, some members proposed that there should be the consideration of design loading so it will be possible to add more stories to the building later on. This is what Mr. Luke is asking. Mr. Leung, about kindergarten and other facilities. Indeed, they will be provided within the housing blocks. I can defer to Mr. Chiu of the Housing Department to give you the details. As to the design, which can cater to the addition of future loading, again, Mr. Chiu will answer that. Thank you. As for other facilities, within the housing development area, there will be 3 kindergartens. As for making available structural leeway, well, we have studied into that and say, for example, if the plot ratio is increased, can we add 1 or 2 stories? Well, in terms of structure and building services, we have to add those, and there will be costing concern. If we want to make room available for 2 stories to be added, the cost in terms of structure and building services will be increased by 20%, and we will not be able to seek that kind of funding under present mechanisms. And the leeway of 20% will be totally wasted if we provide it now, but we will not be able to get the funding later. As for other facilities, you said you would supplement a paper after the meeting, because within the housing development, there will be other facilities outside this building. Mr. Chiu? Well, yes, I can give an introduction. Within the housing development, there will be 4 table tennis tables, 3.4 basketball courts. One of it will be on the podium garden of the public transport exchange, and 1.5 would be within the retail area and 1.5 within subsidized housing area. And we also have another badminton court within the housing development area. And then there will be a children's playground measuring 2,700 square meters and also open space totaling 34,000 square meters. Dr. KK Kwok, 4 minutes. I heard the administration say that there will be a 6:4 ratio for RCHE places. I'd like to ask this question. Every year, we have a reserve of $160 billion, and then 1,500 elderly people every year can't wait for a place before they leave the world. Now you use public money to build this RCHE, but you only cater to the rich. Are you so craving for money? Dr. Zhang also was concerned about the ratio of subsidized and non-subsidized places. Assistant Director, in providing subsidized and non-subsidized places, we have to strike a balance between elderly people in the central queue and others who would like to look for self-sufficient places. Ms. Pang, answer this direct question. Is it that you don't have enough money, or are you craving for money? Why don't you listen to Ms. Pang? Well, I'm asking for a direct answer. I have heard her say other things. Well, I'm sure she will certainly say the government is not craving for money. Well, let her speak. You are not an official. Well, remember, you have to respect the chairman and how he chairs the meeting. And now I'm guiding the AD to answer your question. Ms. Pang. As I said, when we design these services, we have to strike a balance between the needs of different elderly people. Design-wise, we are starting with a 6:4 ratio. We'll then take another look at the situation in the district, and if necessary, we can adjust the ratio. Ms. Pang, it's the North District. If you don't know about it, go there. Take a look. It is one of the districts with the lowest incomes. And as you have heard, even the pro-establishment camp has told you, Queen's Hill houses people with the lowest income. You tell them there will be 150 places, but 40% will fetch a price of over $10,000, and they are so-called self-sufficient places. You are such an uncaring government. There are a few thousand young people who are waiting for a place, and yet it's too late for them to get it. And of course, if there is a surplus of places, when all the poor elderly people are already housed, it's all right. Even if you provide 50%, there are those who are rich, who can afford over $10,000, and they already have a lot of choices. There are these places in Kowloon Tong and other districts. Why are you also trying to look after these people who can fork out more than $10,000? You are going to compel the NGOs do this. They will be subjected to your demand. This is against justice. If you don't change it, we just can't tolerate you spending public money and watching a few thousand people die without providing them with an RCHE place? Let her answer. She is listening and she should answer. Well, she has already answered you, but you are not happy with the answer. There is nothing I can do about it. AD, do you want to supplement? The only thing I'd like to add is that elderly people in the central waiting list are not subject to asset test. Therefore, we should not make a broad brush statement saying that all those in the central waiting list can't afford the money. Some of them actually would choose self-sufficient RCHEs until they get a subsidized place. Thank you. Next, Mr. Abraham Sheikh, first time 4 minutes. Chairman, I was listening into the meeting upstairs, and I can understand where Dr. K.K. Kwok comes from. I seldom see eye to eye with Dr. K.K. Kwok. This is really about government policy. Last week I asked Carrie Lam what she plans to do about these 4,000 elderly people who are waiting for the RCHE places and yet they die before they get a place. This has been written into a PAC report. For the whole of their lives, they have contributed to the prosperity and development of Hong Kong. They have made such huge contribution. Why are we letting them die without getting a place in an RCHE? Why can't we give them a dignified last few years? I don't think they should be segregated on the basis of money. This is a kind of right. It is not alms. We have the responsibility to help them. And it's not just you. I asked Carrie Lam. She did not give me a good answer. She talked about hardware, software. I don't care what ware she is talking about. But how can you resolve this problem? You should not allow these people to die without giving them a place. And also, it's not that we don't have money. It's not that we don't have land. If you want to do it, there are many idle schools that can be converted. Why do you stick to that policy? In fact, you can help them. You can give them a better environment. You can give them some care and medical service. I can really understand Dr. Kwok. He is a doctor. He wants to help people. He wants to relieve pain and save lives. I certainly subscribe to his view, but I should not take you to task. It should be the bureau secretary who should take up the responsibility. Well, he was not scolding you anyway, but I'm asking him to ask the question again. Answer him again. Why can you be so cruel? There are 3,000, 4,000 people dying without a place. Don't you want them to be treated in a humane way? Young people have votes. They are shouting loud, so you are providing them a special block for them to buy property. But your bureau and your department, you should be there to help these people. Why don't you want to take that extra step? Please explain to me, because I still don't understand today. Especially Dr. C.K. Law. He is a social worker.
So why is it that every year we have 3,000, 4,000 elderly applicants waiting and dying whilst on the waiting list, and you also have people dying from flu? Why are these people ignored? Well, but we should stay calm. I understand it's nothing to do with you, Assistant Director. Thank you, member, for the comments. In fact, we have strived to increase the supply of care home places through various means, and it's not the case that we're ignoring the applicants on the waiting list for RCHEs. In fact, starting from last year, we introduced the voucher scheme for residential care homes for the elderly. Elderly people can opt for self-financed RCHEs, and in fact, we do have elderly joining these homes. Well, but even so, for elderly with certain means, they would like to keep the savings to themselves. What you answered just now only serves to anger our elderly people. They resent the government even more. I just want to add, Chairman, that in terms of the residential care home for the elderly voucher scheme, the majority of elderly residents in these homes are fully subsidized by the government. They are not required to pay anything out of their pocket. Yes, they receive government subsidy, but it is not sufficient. 3,000, 4,000 elderly every year. Read my PAC report. If you don't have one, I'll give you a copy. This morning, I heard comments from different members regarding the community facilities, especially for RCHE places. These are strong comments. But we also need to follow the practice of this subcommittee. If it is a policy issue, the matter should be followed up at the relevant panels. At the Public Works Subcommittee, it's not possible to start a debate on such a controversial political issue. But I understand members' sentiment regarding the lack of places. But I have another point to make. Some members may ask this question, and Mr. Leung already answered that in fact the plot ratio has been used up to provide childcare and also elderly facilities, 150 places. Members believe that it is still not sufficient. We have Ms. Ho here from the Planning Department, and can you please tell us whether there are inadequacies in terms of the planning for the community hall and other facilities? Can the plot ratio be relaxed so that more facilities can be accommodated? Thank you, Chairman, for the comments. As explained by my colleagues, I understand that for the OZP, at the moment, in terms of the Queen's Hills public housing development, there is a restriction on the plot ratio. If it is to be relaxed, we need to conduct a study first to gauge the impact on the infrastructure there if the plot ratio is relaxed. But as pointed out by my colleagues, if the plot ratio is relaxed, the whole construction timetable will have to be delayed. And this is a factor we need to consider. Right now, this project is given priority. The point is whether we can find another location in Fanling or Shanshui to provide more community facilities, and we'll look into that as well. Let me reiterate that for general policy issue, they should not be followed up on at the PWSC. But there are also other planning issues. For example, in a government building, we ask whether it's possible to provide more parking spaces. In the end, it's also subject to plot ratio restrictions. Members have ideas about more facilities, and I do think that members have a strong view that these facilities are not sufficient. If we always repeat the same answer that there are restrictions on planning parameters, it's possible that the proposal will not be supported. I wonder when we can have a satisfactory answer on that, but I think this is for members to follow up on at other panel meetings. Next, Mr. Adiju, first round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Some background information first. The Queen's Hill, at the moment, the development will comprise 12,000 housing units. Is that right? Mr. Leung? Yes. What's the public-private housing mix, or rather public HOS mix? 8,800 PRH units of the 12,000. and 3,200 subsidized flats. Chairman, I think you make a very valid point. When we discuss this item, no member would object to this kind of project, that is public housing come subsidized housing development. However, this is a simple question. 150 places for the RCHE or 100 places for the child care center. How do you come by these figures, which in your view could meet the demand of the 30,000 population there? What is the formula, Chairman? Because 35,000 population, if 10% of the population is elderly age, about 65, we're talking about some 7,000. And I just asked Dr. Fernando Zhang, at the moment we have 6% of our population who are aged 65 or above requiring care in a residential care home. So 7,000 times 6% gives you some 400. So why would 150 places sufficient? And I haven't taken into account affordability. If 40% of the places are to be provided on a self-financing basis, that means 150 places can't even meet the demand from the elderly residents. That's 6% of the 7,000 elderly population in the Queen's Hill Public Housing Development, not to mention the overall demand in Fanling and in Hong Kong. I don't understand your logic. Some 100 places only? Well, you mentioned that you need to strike a balance. I don't know what your balance is. First of all, I'd like you to explain clearly to us how you come by these figures. I like to understand your calculation formula. Chairman, I think the principle that members would agree is that at least you should cater for the needs of the 30,000 population. Mr. Leung, regarding how the figures are prepared, I can defer to Assistant Director, Social Welfare Department. Yes, Ms. Pang. For RCHE, the calculation is not based on an individual area or district or project. We gauge the overall demand in Hong Kong. Territory-wide, in different projects, in different areas, we're striving for the provision of RCHE places. We understand that a complex will be built at Queen's Hill to provide services for residents, and these services include those for elderly, for children, for youths, and for residential care for the elderly. My question is very simple. Using a mathematical formula, if you can't even meet the demand for the public housing estate alone, why would you project it to the whole of the territory? That means the figures are not correct. Well, perhaps you can put it simply that for 34,300 population at Queen's Hill, about the distribution of population by age and a projection, have you make an estimate of the demand for childcare centers and other facilities? We have taken into account other facilities such as kindergartens for childcare center, and we have also considered the fact that the new population intake will not solely comprise of young children. We believe that 100 places for childcare center would suffice, whereas for RCHE at the moment we have a shortage territory-wide, and we strive for the provision of more RCHEs across the territory. That means my question has been answered. I asked about 35,000 population. If you do some calculation, you can see that 150 places won't even meet the demand for that housing estate alone. My understanding from the Assistant Director's reply is that they agree that there is a shortage of RCHE places across the territory, and she already agreed. First round, 4 minutes, Mr. Alvin Yeung. This meeting is supposed to be adjourned at 10:30, but still this room is available afterwards. May I first extend the meeting to 10:45 because I think we are all concerned about the facility. 4 minutes, first round, Mr. Alvin Yeung. Chairman, of course there is no ground for us to object to this project. But I feel puzzled having heard the answers because while the government is suggesting that it's true we have a shortage, and according to questions from Dr. Zheng or from Mr. Liu, all we want is for government to tell us the calculation method because the plot ratio cannot be relaxed. And it seems that across the political spectrum, we all agree that there was something wrong. But then, since it is a social welfare facility, we need to give our approval. This is vicious circle. I can tell you in advance that when it comes to the Finance Committee, it is, in fact, the Committee of the whole Council. So every member will be able to ask questions. And we've fallen into a loop. We know clearly that these facilities are not sufficient, and even the government officials agree. And we also understand the urgency of this matter. Nobody wants to delay the construction of these facilities. We want service to be available to the public as well. But this is really laughable. I hope that next time at the Finance Committee, Dr. Luo Chi-kong can come in person, because for this team of government officials, I understand that they are not really responsible. They are only responsible for implementing the project. And we only have the assistant director here who is related to social welfare, and she is not even the policy maker. And then we are frustrated and helpless. And it seems that at the PWSC, we just air our grievances and then we will vote yes to the project. This is ridiculous. I don't have questions, Chairman, because for this item, I think that we should give the go-ahead, but I think in the long term, we should relax the plot ratio. That's all from me. I think this comment is very clear. Next, Mr. Holden Chow, second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think that we should talk about figures. At Queen's Hill, the development is expected to house 34,300, and we have 150 places for the RCHE. But there could be other new housing estates coming on stream. Far more than 34,300 population in total. At the District Council, we made a request that 100 places should be provided, and we already said that it's not sufficient. For this large-scale public housing development with additional 34,300 population, double that of Tongchong, clearly 150 places will not be sufficient.
Let us look at Taibo as well. In Chong'a Road, there will be another PRH development. There will be a childcare center there as well. I'd like to ask the Bureau whether you can give us figures. Here at Queen's Hill, there will be 100 places for the childcare center for 34,000. And then there will be 17,000 in Chong'a Road, about half of the population here. Can we ask for your answer for the record? If the population is just half of that here, how many places are you providing for the childcare center? If it is again 100, then why is it 100 for 34,000? Really, we can't work out the sums, Chairman. I believe you should change the planning standards. Assistant Director. Thank you. Sorry, I don't have the planning figures for the childcare center in Chonga Road in Tai Po here. If necessary, we can go back and find that figure. Well, yes, please. Supplement it after the meeting. I just hope that the public will be told about these figures and that you should know there is a problem with your planning standards. Because we are talking about serving the community, and yet if we stick to these old planning standards, I'm sure you're not going to meet the needs of the community. Especially, there are 34,000 people who will live here, and yet there will be just 150 places for the elderly and 100 places for childcare. I think members have heard that view many times today. Dr. Fernando Zhang, second time 3 minutes. This is clearly a planning fault. Of course, you have exhausted the plot ratio. At the end of 2016, you were talking about 9,000 units. Now there will be 12,000. There were supposed to be 6,300 PRH. Now there are 8,800. And originally 2,400 HOS, now 3,200. I won't repeat all these figures. C.K. Law himself said many years ago, he was asked to do a consultancy report by the LW Bureau showing that 6 to 7% of people over 65 have to be institutionalized. If you use this ratio, the 150 places would fall far short of demand. I think you are doing this on a random basis. Well, we thank Mr. Ibrahim Sheikh for speaking out for the elderly. But your figures are 5 to 6 years ago. In fact, in the year before last, 6,000 people are dying without getting a place, and the queue is getting longer and longer. Every time the officials come, they say the same things. But the people who are dying continue to rise. It is a planning fault. They are negligent of duty. They do not reflect the need. And planning and development turn a blind eye to such needs. And the waiting list for PRH is getting longer, so you are building smaller units so you can house more people, but then you are providing the same social welfare facilities. The entire thing is wrong, Chairman. If you say we should not discuss these here, then what should we discuss? At the panels, we again are given 3-4 minutes. We'll speak our mind, and then they adopt the same attitude. We have been taking them to task all these years, and then they keep on putting these projects in front of us, and we are bound to carry them and pass them, and yet more people are dying. Our coffers is flooded with money, and officials continue to sit down and continue with their official work. And you are also providing 40% of the places for those who can afford a private place, even if it is built by the government. As Mr. Alvin Young said, this is ridiculous. Okay, your remark is very clear. Next, Dr. K.K. Kwok, second time 3 minutes. Chairman, I will keep a cool mind. Mr. Ibrahim Sheikh, I'm not taking these officials to task because I know they are not the main players. It should be Carrie Lam or C.K. Law who should be here to explain policies. But you know, they will never come here. They will ask their small subordinates to come here to take our reprimands. Well, that attitude is unacceptable. As Dr. Fernando Zhang said, at the WS panel, we were supposed to be given an introduction of the project. Well, of course, we won't object. The thing is, Well, the administration said something which was very laughable. Ms. Pang said, we can't change the planning standards frivolously, and if you want to do anything, it will delay the project. Is that a threat? Well, the town planning board is totally made up of appointed members. Sorry, Mr. Ibrahim Sheikh, if large developers enjoy good relationship with the government, I know some of them don't, even if some of them are. And if you're on good terms with the government, they will relax the rules for you. But then the government will stick to its planning standards for the provision of social welfare. And if you want to ask for more, you are going to delay the entire housing project. Don't think that we are foolish. You can manipulate all the advisory committees and you set all the caps. Now you say you can't do it. Just now talking about land, there is the entire golf course. If it can be devoted to the building of RCHEs, I'm sure nobody will die without getting a place. Well, but golf is important, isn't it? There are 2,600 members and they have to play golf there. You say there is no land? It's a matter of will. The Fanning Golf Course is not that far away from Queen's Hill. Let us not sit here and tell lies. My question is, if the administration can take back this paper and think about the RCHE and the CCC, and if you can somehow relax it and increase the number of places at the RCHE and CCC, let us know why you say that will delay the project. And also, if there will be more places, you can certainly do it within the advisory committee system. Mr. Leung, very briefly, please. Time is up. Thank you, members. Let us try whether we can fine-tune the design to see whether we can adjust the figures. What do you mean by fine-tuning the figures? Well, I think Mr. Leung has said he will try his best. No, what will be the margin of adjustment? We have to go back and review the situation first. I can see Mr. Eddie Chu waiting for a second round and Dr. Zhang a third round. Let us extend the meeting until we can finish dealing with this paper because members' views are very clear. There is a duty member meeting some complainants. Okay, Mr. Eddie Chu, second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I like to think of it the other way around. Mr. Edward Lau mentioned increasing plot ratio, and then you say you have to go through the town planning process. Let us say we don't do anything with the plot ratio, but part of it can be shifted from PRH and HOS to welfare facilities so we can work out our sums. Society will not be harmed. You're just transferring plot ratio for RCHE places. You will be meeting an earnest demand in society. I won't agree that we should increase the plot ratio for this site. The density would be too high. My question is, at Queen's Hill, well, it is included in the overall plan for New Territories North. Mr. Edward Lau said just now that in the vicinity there is also a lot of land. My question for the Development Bureau is, what is the blueprint for the entire NTN? Queen's Hill is like the first soldiers. It seems Queen's Hill is regarded as an independent project, but now it will be incorporated into the entire NT North development. Can the Bureau let us know when you can provide a blueprint for the entire NTN? DS, Ms. Ho. Thank you, Chairman. The preliminary technical study for NTN has been completed. A year or so ago, when we worked on the 2030 plus public consultation, some major proposals have been included for consultation. We are now analyzing views on 2030 plus, and we'll have to make a decision as to the two growth areas and whether they should be started in NTN. We hope within the year or by early next year there will be a decision. Well, DS, you give me the impression that the development of NTN has already started because Queen's Hill is part of NTN. It is on the periphery. So in a way, you have started to develop NTN. Sorry, Chairman, as the member was saying, NTN is made up of by many different areas. Queen's Hill is just one of those. It is also on the periphery. And Chairman, I'd like to make use of this opportunity to talk about RCHEs. It was asked whether the plot ratio can be raised so we can solve the problem, but not entirely so, I'm afraid. Talking about RCHEs or CCC, there is a height restriction. It must be below the height of 20 meters within a building. Even if we relax the plot ratio, we may not be solving the entire problem. However, we are also looking whether we can relax the standard somewhat so we can have more space to plan for an RCHE. And also, I was thinking how we can help the discussion. Now we are concentrating on Queen's Hill and a multi-purpose building, but we can look further. In NTN, we don't know whether this will be done, but in fact, as some members said, Queen's Hill is near Fanling and Shengshui. We have Kutong North NTN development, and many GIC sites have been reserved, and some of those can be used for RCHEs and other community facilities. After the meeting, the Bureau can provide the information. So when members consider the issue, they can look further and a bigger area. 2 more members would like to have a third round. If members do not agree to further extension of the meeting, we'll have to adjourn the meeting here. We'll continue next time. If there is any opposition, I can't extend the meeting. We want to pass the item quick because we can help some people. Well, I don't think if we carry the paper today, there will be any improvement because we want to see some actual improvement before the paper goes to FC. Okay, members don't want to put the paper to the vote now. We'll continue next time. The next meeting will be held on the 12th of February, on Monday at 8:30. Meeting adjourned.